telepathy exists because they've had experiences that seem telepathic. But we now know in science that that can't really happen because the mind's inside the head. So thoughts can't possibly have an effect at a distance. Therefore, all the apparent evidence for telepathy, all the experiences that seem telepathic, are illusions. People are just deceived by a faulty grasp of statistics, by chance coincidence, by wishful thinking, or possibly by fraud. So the job of proper scientists is to debunk all this evidence, to dismiss it with the contempt it deserves. Now that's a very common attitude, and most people here, I'm sure, run up against that kind of dogmatism. It's where most people encounter this dogmatism in its most undiluted form. Dogma 10 is that mechanistic medicine is the only kind that really works. Alternative and complementary therapies, and indeed matrix reimprinting, may appear to work, but that's not because they really do work. They only work it's because people would have got better anyway, or it's just the placebo effect. Therefore, the only kind of medicine that really works is mechanistic medicine, because we're machines, so you have to, anything that just works on the machine principle is the only kind that can really work. Therefore, that's what all our taxpayers' money goes on through the Medical Research Council. £600 million a year goes exclusively to mechanistic medicine, not a penny for any other kind of therapies. And official medical systems all around the world focus exclusively on mechanistic medicine because it's the only kind that's really scientific. So these are the 10 dogmas, and this is more or less the default belief system of almost all university graduates, even in the arts, not just in the sciences. It's the working agenda of governments, education institutions, and corporations, including drug companies, all around the world. And yet, I think it's deeply misconceived, and it survives largely because it's a kind of habit of thinking. And the reason people go along with it in public is that they don't want to be thought stupid. If you challenge it, and this is the scientific worldview, if you challenge it, it proves you're uneducated or stupid. And people say, how could it possibly be wrong? Look what science has given us: jet planes, antibiotics, mobile phones, the internet. It seems so impressive that no one feels they can challenge it. Yet, all these things would still work if we had a different framework for doing science, and I think we'd discover a whole lot more things that we don't know about. Mechanistic science is brilliant for developing machines. It's all about machines. And it's brilliant when it comes to developing machines like rockets or computers. It's not very good about dealing with minds, because minds have no place within it, or anything to do with minds. In other words, virtually the entire human world, including medicine, which is so influenced by minds, our health and our well-being and our emotional life, are influenced, they're products of our minds, as well as our bodies. Right, well, I'm going to now focus in on, first of all, on the total amount of matter and energy is always the same. This was the dogma which I myself questioned least. I'd questioned most of the others for years, but it was only a few years ago when I started thinking about this book that I thought I ought to look at this one, because I'd never questioned it before. I thought it was the most solid and well-grounded of all these assumptions. We all learn it at school, the principle of conservation of matter and energy, and I thought it must be true. The more I looked at it, though, the less certain it became, until it turns out to be one of the shakiest of them all. First of all, the reason for this dogma being there is not because people have spent centuries measuring things with incredible accuracy on accurate balances and things. It's an assumption that was built into science from the outset, before there was any evidence. It started in ancient Greece. In ancient Greece, the philosophers were obsessed with the idea of eternity. They thought that reality must be eternal. Ultimate reality was changeless or eternal. The reason they thought that is probably because of mystical experience, that many mystics have the experience of a timeless reality beyond this world, or beyond our normal experience. The Greek philosophers tried to turn it into an intellectual philosophy, and they had different candidates for eternity. Pythagoras and his school said the eternal reality is mathematical. Maths stands outside space and time, it's changeless, and it's the ultimate truth that determines everything that happens in the world. Plato generalized this Pythagorean theory to say that the ultimate reality are changeless ideas or forms. Everything in the world is a reflection of these eternal archetypes. They themselves, though, stand outside space and time, the Platonic forms. The materialist philosophers, Democritus and Epicurus, in ancient Greece, came up with a different view. They said the eternal reality is matter. Matter's made of lots of little bits, the atoms, which by definition can't be broken up or destroyed. And so the total amount is always the same. And the world we live in is made up of tiny atoms recombining and permutating, moving in the void. But the total number always stays the same. Now, in the 17th century, these Greek ideas were revived. And atomism was revived as one of the foundations of modern science. And the idea was that God created all the atoms in the universe in the first place, and by definition they could never decay or be destroyed, and they were God-given anyway, so they couldn't be broken up by anything other than God himself. So the total amount was always the same. The total amount of matter must always be the same. That was the basis for it, philosophy and theology, nothing to do with empirical measurements. Now the same with energy. When God in the 17th century created the world machine, because the mechanistic theory led to a new kind of mechanistic theology, which some theologians adopted, not all by any means, but people who thought of themselves as ahead of the bunch, right out in front of modern thinking. Well, the world's just a machine, God made it, he's the intelligent designer of the world machine, and because God made it like a perfect machine, he set it in motion at the very beginning, and the total amount of God-given motion or force or energy continues indefinitely forever, because it's God-given. And that was the basis of the principle of conservation of energy. Now, they were formulated more rigorously in the 19th century. The conservation of energy became the first law of thermodynamics. But nevertheless, these basic assumptions were built into science right from the outset on rather shaky theological grounds or philosophical assumptions. Well, physicists don't feel quite as bound by them as most of us. In the 1980s, it turned out that galaxies were attracting each other much too much, even if you add up all the matter within them. You include all the stars, gas clouds, make a generous allowance for planets, black holes, and add up all that matter, and they're still attracting each other much too much. And the stars within them are revolving around the center of the galaxy much too quickly to be explained by regular gravitation. So either there's something horribly wrong with the theory of galaxies, or there's a lot more matter in them than we can see and know about. Most physicists took the line that there must be more matter there, no one had seen it or observed it, and there was no other evidence for it, so they called it dark matter. Dark because you can't see it. Well, how much dark matter is there? Well, exactly the right amount to make the equations work. And so you titrate the amount of dark matter until you've got just the right amount, everything works fine, the equations work perfectly. And if you observe a galaxy that doesn't work, then you add in more or less dark matter to make it work. It's a perfect system of physics. The only trouble is no one knows what dark matter is, and there's no independent evidence for it. They've been trying to figure it out for 30 years, and no one knows, even now. One of the problems, though it solved a problem for physicists by explaining galaxies, is that if you add in all this extra matter into the universe, it makes the universe have much more gravitation. That meant that the expansion of the universe should be slowing down, and in the 1980s, physicists thought it would slow down, stop expanding, and then begin to contract faster and faster till it ended in tears with the opposite of the Big Bang, known in the trade as the Big Crunch. So this theory held sway for quite a few years, but then in 1999 it was discovered that the universe is not slowing down. If you look at distant galaxies and quasars, they seem to be speeding up in their recession from us. The universe is growing faster and faster at an accelerating rate. So how do you explain that? Well, a simple solution. There must be another form of energy pushing it apart. And we don't know about it in any other way. We can't see it or detect it in any other way. It's dark energy. So we now have dark energy, just the right amount to explain the facts. And as the facts change, the amounts of matter and energy change. No one worries about the conservation of them. And in fact, as the universe expands, it creates more dark energy, so it's now a perpetual motion machine. The total amount of dark matter and dark energy is now 96% of reality, according to regular physics. It's as if physics has discovered a cosmic unconscious lying underneath the surface of the matter we know. Is dark energy conserved? Is dark matter conserved? Are they always the same? Well, no, dark energy is increasing. Can they be converted into ordinary matter and energy? Nobody knows. We don't know what they are, what they do, or how they work. So is the law of the total amount of matter and energy is always the same and always has been since the Big Bang a scientific truth? It doesn't look terribly plausible on the face of things unless you exclude 96% of reality. And even then, it's pretty questionable. If you look at the realm, the application of this principle to life, it's a rather interesting story too. In the 1850s, Hermann von Helmholtz in Germany made it his life's mission as a medical student in the University of Berlin. He made it his life's mission to rid biology of vitalism. Vitalism is the doctrine that living organisms are truly alive, as opposed to machines. And he made it his mission to get rid of this belief. And so he said living organisms are machines, therefore they follow only the same laws of energy as other machines. Therefore energy must be conserved as just regular energy. And there's no other mysterious energies involved in life. So all other belief systems that say there are, including therapeutic systems that said there were, must be wrong. Again, just an assumption. It wasn't until 1900 that people tried measuring energy in living in humans. They had humans in for 3 weeks in calorimeters, pedaling bicycles, and they measured, or doing other forms of exercise, or just sitting there, measured carbon dioxide out, oxygen in, urine, feces, food, heat,